depending upon where you are. Uh, Glad you could join us today. This is our first Lunch and Learn of October, and we're very excited to have Parker Short from Pyxis Growth Partners with us. Parker's going to share with us a little bit about how to make our remote selling activities more effective, talk a little about CRM and really hopefully just manage a conversation. We always like to make these lunch and learns more of a conversation than a presentation. So he's got some slides to guide the conversation, but other than that, feel free to jump in. As I was mentioning to a few of you, I had oral surgery earlier this week, so I'm going to try to say as little as possible, and Stephanie's going to pretty much drive the show today. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Steph.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Welcome, everybody. We're really excited to have you here, and we are very excited to have Parker here. I've looked through the information that he's sharing, and it's going to be very valuable. I'm personally very excited for this. So with that, Parker, would you move to the second slide, please? So I would like to hit enter, there you go. Just run through a couple of very quick housekeeping things to help you optimize the interactive experience. So if you haven't already, please make sure we know who you are and update your profile name. And if you would go to the upper right corner of the Zoom window and select the speaker view, if it currently says team view, this will help you make sure that you're seeing the presentation and the information correctly rather than a bunch of people. So, and also please select the participant button at the bottom. When the attendee list box opens up, at the bottom you'll see several buttons. You can use these to interact. You've got a yes and a no. You can also use the blue raise hand to ask a live question. Feel free to send me a question via chat. Feel free to use the chat openly to have conversations, to share knowledge, to ask questions.
Stephanie, we disabled that thumbs down, right?
No thumbs down. There's no thumbs down.
Okay, good.
No. We have no negative.
Won't actually work. Don't bother.
There's no negativity here.
Yep.
If, by the way, just a quick side note, if Zoom takes over your computer and you don't want it to, just, you can always hit escape to bring it out of the full screen mode. One thing we do ask is that you keep yourself muted unless you're presenting or asking a question. We definitely encourage you to ask questions throughout, share your experiences. So raise your hand or use the chat box. As you guys know, TAB is a community that's all about collaboration and shared experiences and ideas. One final note, the technicality, this is being recorded and we will make it available upon request. Would you move to the next slide, please, Parker? And with that, I am very excited to present Parker Short, who is the co-founder and head of new business for Pyxis Growth Partners. Pyxis is a growth agency focused on using sales and marketing to promote quick company growth. They focus on growth through tactics, strategy, and technology working together. Parker works with companies on CRM implementations and CRM-driven marketing campaigns. He also heads up the new business and strategy to help folks figure out sales processes and make their CRM reflect that. So with that, I will turn it over to Parker.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And like Steph and Joe both said, definitely want this to be interactive. Throw out any questions, disagree with me, make it kind of fun. It's Friday, right? So with that, today we're going to talk about the 100% remote sales model and how to optimize your CRM for growth, kind of given all of that. So just as an overview, we've got kind of three main areas I want to discuss today. First is how to use your CRM as your sales foundation, and really given the remote nature of everything, how that can change and the benefits there. And then when you've got that strong foundation in place, there's new opportunities that open up to you. So that's, smart ways to prospect and smarter ways to research and kind of gain insights on your target audience and prospects and things like that. So hopefully that sounds exciting. Like I said, feel free to stop and ask questions. Let's get into it. But really, what drove this is we've all been forced into remote sales, right? And whether you were planning on, you're well prepared for that or not well prepared for that, it's here. So let's make the most of it. So really what I wanted to do is put together some of the ways that can really be an opportunity for your sales team, and how, by nailing some of the fundamentals, that'll really help drive some growth for y'all. So a little bit about myself, like Steph said, had a new business at Pyxis Growth Partners. We work with companies on their CRM for both marketing and sales strategies. Really what that means is I have seen a lot of bad CRM setups. Luckily, I have not seen anyone on the phone, on the calls CRM setup, so this is not personal, but I have seen some stuff. And so we're going to talk about ways to make it not bad. I like this question, just given the quarantine times. What's everyone's new quarantine hobby? Mine's been cooking Indian food, which has been a challenge. Requires quite a bit of spices, but finding places that sell those spices. But that's a little bit about me. So like I said, Pyxis Growth Partners, you may hear me kind of reference, we're HubSpot partners and help people review and implement HubSpot for their customer teams. I'm not going to focus too much on HubSpot or any one platform specifically, but that's just about us. Kind of understanding the platform there is what drives a lot of your more advanced sales and marketing strategies these days. Particularly for other companies, things we're looking at are CRM implementation, account-based marketing, sales enablement, demand generation, and sales and marketing alignment. And particularly that last one really requires a good CRM setup. So moving 100% remote. So I want to start with a story. So I spoke to a client the other day, and he kind of is the key person I was thinking of as putting this together. So he had previously, their company was based in Dallas, and one of their biggest clients was probably down the road from them. So they were heavily in person. And even when they weren't talking to that one company, their other prospects, they would drive down, everything really was in person. And so their CRM was kind of in tatters, somewhat lightly updated, let's say. But one of the things he had told me was that he had finally kind of figured out why we've been harping on him to use the CRM so well this entire time. Because he said, well, we had to go all remote. We weren't planning on that. It was hard at first, but they finally figured out that made them use their CRM more efficiently. And it was kind of like a grand realization. He said, we figured out, okay, we have to determine and put into place what our actual process is. It's not just, well, I met this person, I leave a note, and I'll come back and see what that note was later, and maybe I leave a task for myself, maybe I don't. They had to finally figure out what does the operation side of their CRM really look like. And finally, he told me, it kind of was forcing them to where they felt comfortable starting to talk about scaling their sales operation. It was a family-owned business, and aside from a few outsiders, they were very, comfortable kind of keeping it in the family. But finally, he was starting to say, okay, because of the pandemic and having to be remote, they were starting to get a handle on how their sales operation could scale and how they could bring other people in potentially down the road. And he was even talking about interns, and we talked about how they might be able to help as BDRs and all that. So I give that just as a story about potentially where this can go for y'all, or where going to 100% remote can really take us. So like I said, it's a big shift for a lot of people, but there is a lot of upside. And one of the questions, we can talk about this if we want to, but what are the benefits you can see by moving to 100% remote sales? Or if you've already done it, what are the benefits you've already seen? I would be kind of curious to get some thoughts from y'all. Anyone brave enough to weigh in?
I think it's provided a lot more flexibility in general.
Mm-hmm.
People are balancing or integrating, I think is the better way to say it, their life and their work, and it's just in general giving a whole lot more flexibility.
It saves a lot of time too. I mean, it's interesting because it seems like now people they're more accepting of it than they might have been 6 months ago, and so now it's not as big a deal to say, well, let's just we can do this over Zoom, over the phone, over email versus in person. And clearly there's always going to be a need to be in person, but there are definitely some situations where you can save a lot of time, I think, just by handling things more remotely. And that may be one small upside to all this, is it's changed people's mindset in that regard, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with Red. I mean, I think it could be much more productive and much more effective, and save not just time but money. So because buyers, I think people are moving in this direction anyway, and COVID just sort of accelerated the move towards more remote selling. But now buyers have been forced into a situation where they have to interface with people remotely, where in the past, a lot of salespeople expected to have to visit physically with buyers. You know, so effective salespeople now could spend more time selling instead of sitting on airplanes and driving around in cars and doing all that other stuff, which, you know, to Ritz's point, costs both time and money, right?
I think part of it too, I think especially in B2B, it seems to have, for some companies, level the playing field. What I mean by that is, because we are selling remotely, everyone is home, most everyone. You know, trade shows are not happening. So as a small company, you can look big or have the perception of big because you're not going to the trade shows, but you can. So I think in some sense, this is good for the smaller companies to kind of up their game. And there's perhaps less competition in that sense. You could look like a big player.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bronson. That's actually, I would say we fall into that category of it's benefited us. It kind of puts everyone on equal playing field, right? It's not about, well, I can fly out a person who can, take you out to lunch and blah, blah, blah. It's more about the fundamentals. Yeah. So like I said, really 3 big things I want to focus on today. I've got the triangle of conjoined success over here, but really by optimizing the CRM and setting that up as the foundation of the sales process, we're going to start there and then look at how that can enable you to prospect more effectively, and then how smart insights can really improve how you actually sell to people. So lots of, basically today we'll kind of look at a survey of where a well-optimized CRM can take you. And I think it's a pretty interesting place. So optimizing your CRM. Within the CRM, there's really 3 areas I want to highlight today. 1 is going to be how to keep your data clean. 2, how to create and implement a strong process. We'll spend some time there. And then 3 is key integrations to make your CRM more valuable. I've got some initial recommendations on that. So first off, has anyone ever run across a CRM with bad data in it? I'm not seeing all the head shakes, so I'm skeptical.
Oh, yes.
I would say, has anybody ever not seen the CRM with?
Exactly.
Exactly. So, as you may expect, the CRM operates off a key principle, garbage in, garbage out. So if you fail to keep a CRM up to date, it gets worse. When it gets worse, you're less likely to update it because it's out of date. And it's kind of a negative spiral there if you're not careful. If you don't keep your CRM up to date, I wouldn't expect much from it. You want to make sure you've got good processes for keeping it clean. Otherwise, it's going to feel like a roulette wheel every time you try to use it. Just that you're not going to know, is that person still there? Is that really the last time someone talked to them? Are they a current customer? Are they a previous customer? All that kind of stuff. The less you can really trust the data in your CRM, the worse it's going to be. That's why you'll hear sometimes people talk about having the system of record, why it's oftentimes the CRM. That's why. Otherwise, you end up with just siloed data, incorrect data, and it's hard to really do anything. So there's a few kind of key ways or easy ways, I'd say, to do that, to get your CRM up to date. The first one, this is becoming more common. This is something we work with people on a lot, is actually to integrate it with your email marketing. One of the big reasons that this can help you keep your CRM up to date and keep the data clean is that if you're sending out just a newsletter once a month, nothing fancy, then if they move on, you'll know that. You can see that they've bounced, and that can help keep your CRM clean. The other thing that's helpful for is that if you see that someone's bounced, that can be a good indicator. This is just kind of a side sales note. See where they went off to, and maybe, it's a previous customer or something. See if they're at a new company and they need help again. That's kind of, that's one route. Another thing you can do is there are actually a lot of services where, and this can get expensive, you can enrich your data in your CRM. We'll look at a few kind of options later on, but there's some ways where you can hang your data off to a data enrichment service, let them come back and tell you who's there, who isn't, based on an email address or phone number, do all sorts of fancy validations. It can definitely work. I've seen it work, but like I said, it's a little pricey. And then the third and, least glamorous, but sometimes it's just what you got to do, is just a LinkedIn project where you go through and see who's actually there, who isn't, who's got a new job title, is the company up to date. Not fun, but can definitely make you appreciate keeping your CRM up to date in the future. if you don't mind a little self-flagellation. So next up on the CRM foundation is really having strong processes. I mean kind of a lot of different things here, so we'll spend some time on this. So like I said, we worked with a lot of companies on CRM implementations and cleanups, and one of the most important steps is to have strong processes for common activities. And I didn't put it on here, but also owners of those activities or who's responsible for keeping it up to date. So what I put together is the 5-minute process audit, and we won't necessarily spend 5 minutes on it, but here's kind of what I mean by having strong CRM processes. One is, when does someone have a deal or opportunity created? If you've got multiple sales, if you've got if it's just you using the CRM or you only have one salesperson, this does not matter that much. But the second you have 2 salespeople, you want to see kind of who's creating the most opportunities and who's closing the most opportunities. And having a definitive start point on when that's an opportunity or a deal will make a big difference, right? I've seen some people where they say, well, I had a good meeting and I have a good feeling about it, so I created a deal. Okay, that's a bad starting criteria. What you want is, well, we completed our discovery meeting agenda, or we did a demo, or something preferably that's kind of black and white and, indisputable. Everyone agrees this is the starting point. It's not just in, warm status or things like that. So that's one thing to look at. The next one would be, how do you keep track of which leads have been followed up on? I often will look at last sales activity dates is something in our CRM, but if you are doing a good job of tracking activity, and there's some really great integrations that make that easy, it is not the huge data entry lift it once was, then you can automatically say, when was the last activity on a contact or a lead? And if you're trying to manage your sales team, you can see, okay, hey, this lead, they're assigned to you. You haven't reached out in 2 weeks. Maybe they're worth looking into. Useful from a management point of view, and just keeping track of your own leads and your follow-up. How do you keep track of who's responsible for specific contacts? That can get the way this gets tricky is when you've got someone that's a contact owner on a lead or a person, and then also on a company. If those things don't line up, that can cause some issues. Or you end up with people who just aren't assigned, or it's kind of a free-for-all. You want to just make sure you've got good, lead or contact assignment rules, basically. Next, lead sources. If you are trying to do any sort of tracking of where your new business is coming from, be it from marketing campaigns or just referrals and trade shows and Tab, all sorts of places, do you have a place where you keep track of that? Do you have a uniform way that you keep track of that, so that it's not referral means it came from a customer or it came from a partner or things like that? You want to make sure you've got a good place of where to track that, and also make sure that whether that's being tracked at the individual contact level or at the company level. Otherwise, when you try to run a report, it's going to be a mess whether you're looking at the right place or not. And then one other one, if you've got marketing generated leads coming into your CRM, how does sales get notified? This is kind of that sales and marketing handoff piece, and I see a lot of people struggle here. You can end up with marketers who say, well, I generated the lead, they're in there. I'm sure someone's following up on it. Sure is not a system, right? That's that's a feeling. So what you want to make sure is it's got to basically flow both ways. So you've got sales is notified in at least one way, maybe more, that a new lead's come in. They know it's been assigned. They know it's new, and then marketing's got to have a way to see if they've actually been followed up on. So one of the ways we'll typically do this is a lot of systems when a lead comes in, there's a lead status or status field. So one of the things we'll always do is make sure that when they come in and go to sales, it's set to new. It's kind of obvious, but the main thing then marketing looks for is, when does it move from new? So you can keep kind of a report or a list of leads that aren't being followed up on, because if anyone's new more than 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever your time frame is, that's a problem. But then it's also easy to pull those out and kind of improve the process from there. So any questions on the process stuff? Anyone? All good? All right, cool. So, these can all seem minor depending on your size, but they scale up really bad. If you, just like software can scale and processes can scale, so can CRM issues. They're easier to address when they're small. They're harder to address when they are big. So keep that in mind. It's one of those things, if you invest time now, before you're trying to scale up, it can really benefit you down the road.
Parker, I have a question, and you may be getting to this, but at the risk of opening up a big can of worms. So, what do you see from a business owner standpoint as the biggest sort of miss that owners make when either implementing a new CRM or trying to get their salespeople to use CRMs more effectively?
Yeah, there's two I can think of. One is buying into the myth that it's too hard to track all the right information. It's not that hard. For one, it's your job. And then two, there's also lots of tools that make it really easy. The second thing I miss, kind of a different area, is not tracking what's going on outside of deals. So whenever someone sets up a CRM, your deal and opportunity reports is where, especially the CEO, is the first thing you're going to look at, right? What's in the pipeline? Is it going to close? Show me a forecast, all that kind of stuff. It's super important. I don't blame you. But what's happening that fills the pipeline, right? Where, is your sales team out there prospecting? Are they identifying new leads? Are those leads getting qualified? You want to make sure you've got, a similar process of where the pipeline's getting filled along the way. That's kind of a common, I've seen that be an oversight when doing these types of projects. So
cool.
Those would be two to watch out for. Yeah, good question. And with a lot of these things, the problem is no one's in charge of them. No one person is responsible for keeping the CRM clean. Everyone's kind of responsible, which means no one's responsible. So try to make sure that one person is truly in charge of some of these things. And it can be small things. Data imports are one of the first things I always lock down in a CRM project is, 1 to, 2 or 3 people I really trust are allowed to import data. Everyone else can come plead their case to us. But that's just a great way to mess up a CRM really quickly, is by importing bad data. Managing integrations is pretty much just as bad. It's super useful. I've got a whole section on integrations to consider, but you want to be real careful about who can set those up, because those have similar abilities where it can just flood your database with bad stuff if you're not careful. And then new properties or field creation. Sometimes it's not, even if it's like a once a month meeting or something, or every 2 weeks, where you just say, okay, we're going to talk not just about sales, stuff that's in the pipeline, things like that, but just how's the CRM working for us? Are we capturing all the information? How are you capturing this information? Make sure it's uniform. That could be a good way to solve it too, but you just want to make sure there's some sort of process or person in charge of that. All right, so integrations. This is kind of the fun. This is where it gets fun. Once you've kind of eaten your vegetables and set up processes and gotten your data clean, then you can talk integrations, right? So this is one of the things I think has been steadily shifting, and is now shifting even faster with CRMs, especially with the remote push, is that integrations can really make or break your CRM. Very rarely are you using just the CRM by itself. You may start out that way, but I would look pretty heavily at what are the integrations that can help you out here. And that can be, first party or third party, but really there's no longer, like we were talking about with the data stuff, there's not an excuse for things not going to the CRM. And a lot of that is by virtue of how good integrations have gotten. So that can mean when you are sending an email, that can go right into your CRM. When you have a meeting that's on your calendar, that can get automatically logged as a meeting happening. If you've got voice over IP or a calling system integrated, and call inbound or outbound can show up right in the contact record, match it by the phone number. All of like the normal, we'll talk about quoting too. A lot of the stuff salespeople used to spend a lot of time on or complain about having to log into the CRM, it can all be integrated. It can be a really smooth process, and it can really work like a charm. So just high level, I'll get off my soapbox, but definitely check out integrations. We'll look at some examples, but you can really go from the entire life cycle of your customer, from, lead capture to closing with the right integrations here. And that's including B2B people. We'll get into some of that. But the big benefit here is you're making your salespeople more efficient. You're capturing more data. More data means you can run better and kind of more interesting reports, understand really what's working, and save them time, which is really one of the big names of the game. Some good candidates. I've got kind of 4, including on the next slide, but email integration, this is kind of table stakes at this point, I think, for a lot of CRMs. making sure that when you're emailing people, it's very easy to log them in the CRM. That's kind of the base level. You know, you can get to the point where when you're working in like G Suite or Outlook, it even pulls in CRM information for you, where you can see, hey, you know, I'm about to email Joe. Here's the last time you emailed him. He's at Tab and Z3, and you know, gives me the full kind of bird's eye view, so I'm not having to switch back and forth. It'll surface that right for you.
Parker, can I ask you a question about that? So,
Yeah.
do you prefer? I think from an integration standpoint, do you prefer an automatic integrator that takes in every single email into the CRM, such that say we go back and forth 12 times to set up a meeting time? So we really want that in the CRM, or do you prefer a system that allows the salespeople to tag which emails are actually relevant to a client record or a deal record?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of the times, we always want to give the sales rep the right to choose, you know, which emails go into the CRM. For a lot of times, it's, you know, a checkbox or something like that. Most of them are pretty good at handling like a threaded conversation like that and saying, okay, you went back and forth a bunch of times, but we're not going to say that was 12 emails. It'll kind of condense it somehow. But it's a good thing to test. You know, the worst thing what you don't want is, you know, hey, how come my email with my dentist about my upcoming root canal showed up in the CRM, right? That's like the obvious one. Usually leaving it in the salesperson's hands is pretty good. I like to, you know, sometimes people want to discuss whether it's default on or default off. Just depends on your team. You know, if the majority of stuff's going in the CRM, I say default on, and just make sure they're kind of always thoughtful of, there's also usually pretty good tools that will block out like internal emails or certain domains from going into the CRM. So with a little bit of customization, it should, you know, you can get about 95% right, and then give them the right to, you know, turn it on or off after that to kind of get at that final bit. Good question though. So phone systems and VoIP integrations, if you have a phone system or are considering one, this is one of the big advantages. You know, just like when you give your sales rep an email address, and then if they, you know, go on to a different company or something like that, you can still see what, you know, information, you know, if someone's emailing about an upcoming deal, you can still, you know, have that forward to you. Same thing if you give them obviously a company phone number. And with some of these VoIP systems, it is, you know, 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes to spin up a new phone number and assign it to a person. It's really dead easy. The benefit there is, you know, if they leave, obviously you can still pull in their phone number, you can reassign it, but also all incoming and outgoing calls can be automatically logged, which is super handy. Call logging is very, you know, email logging's been easy for a while. Call logging is still a little tedious if you're not using one of these. But a lot of the systems now, all inbound and outbound calls can get logged, and you get to keep track of if there's a voicemail that can go to the system that might note, you know, create a task, then you follow up within, you know, 12 hours. You can see if it was answered or if it was passed along, all sorts of stuff. So that's another good category probably to consider. Calendar integration is another great one. You know, again, it can see what meetings you've got, see who's on it, pull that in, log that a meeting happened. That's one of the more, you know, calls and emails, nice to have on the contact record. If you're having a full meeting, that's, you know, probably a little more important. So that's a good one. The other benefit there, you've probably seen if you use like Calendly or, you know, HubSpot's got this, or Salesloft, things like that. You can have a meetings link where you can send it off to people and let them, you know, pick a time to meet with you, which is very handy. You can cut down a lot of back and forth. And then finally, another category just to kind of be aware of, and this is kind of the hot area I would say right now, is proposal and quoting tools. CPQ is sometimes what you'll hear. It's configure, price, quote. There's a lot going on here, and especially moving more towards even B2B services stuff. We're certainly exploring it more. There's stuff kind of at the less integrated level, which is where we are right now with proposal integration, where you can say, I want to take information from my CRM and pull that directly in from my proposal. So the company name, the contact person, you know, if you've got fields on, you know, here are their challenges, here's what we're trying to sell, all that stuff can go straight into proposal and cut down on a lot of data entry. That's kind of at the shallow end of the pool. You go to the deep end of the pool, and if you've got, you know, specific products you're selling or productized services, you can attach those to a deal, build out your full quote, send it off, you know, accept a credit card payment or an ACH payment, do the entire thing, you know, pretty much straight from the CRM. There's a spectrum of options there, but it's definitely worth looking into.
Hey, I've got a quick question on that. What are what are two or three that I know you don't want to get too far into the product specifically, but what are two or three of those that you think work pretty well that are, for a smaller business or a good starting place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one we use, so I like this one the most, is called PandaDoc. And it integrates with a lot of different CRMs, a lot of kind of like small, medium business CRMs, all the way up to HubSpot and Salesforce. And it does that full, it'll do the proposal piece like I was discussing, where it'll personalize based on information in the CRM. It can do the full quoting piece. We don't have it set up, but it's pretty powerful. And it even integrates with payment capture and accounting stuff too. So if you're doing like QuickBooks payments or Bill.com or something like that, has some options there as well. I like that. They have a competitor called Proposify that I think is kind of similar, might work, depending on your needs. Yeah. And some of the CRMs are starting to push into this space, also kind of creating their own integrated options. I know Salesforce has had a pretty advanced CPQ tool for a while, and HubSpot's looking into it as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are the two I've actually looked at a little bit. So, just quickly, any idea if HubSpot's looking at that, how close that is?
They announced they have something in beta. I have not tested it, and I think it's at the enterprise level. So
it's going to be at the high end then.
Yeah, they've had quotes for a while, where it's kind of, I need X, Y, and Z widgets, that kind of thing. You can send it off. The proposal stuff they're working on, but I haven't tested it out, and I'm not sure when it's coming.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So once you've got a good foundation on the CRM, the next thing you can move into is smarter prospecting. So if you've got good data entry, good processes, all that, there's a lot that you can do around prospecting, especially in this remote, you can't go to a trade show, you can't go to a networking event. So prospecting is a little more important here. So, and fully acknowledging some people hate prospecting. I get it. But you got to do it. Someone has to do it. I don't know. If you run the company, I guess you don't have to, but, since we're all remote now, prospecting, your ability here is kind of more important. So there's lots of bad ways to prospect. I was gonna pull up some examples, but I thought that was too mean. And then there's some recommendations I've got on kind of better ways to prospect with using the CRM data and actually putting some effort in here. Really, I'm pretty anti spraying and praying, the high volume approach. There are a lot of these same tools that they're kind of like a hammer. You can, hammer a nail, or you can hammer your toe if you're not careful. So basically, once you've got these things in place, it's all about, can you use them the right way versus just using them. So when it comes to prospecting, you can go for the bulk approach. Maybe that works depending on your industry. It usually doesn't. I never find it good. So one of the easiest things to do is, find 50 people you actually want to work with, or start at 5 or 10, I don't care. And actually find out something useful to send them. I don't know if that sounds glib, but I find that to be sometimes a challenge. One of the things, when I say useful though, what I mean though is, try to find some content, provide value, and personalize. Those are 3 key things. There's good tools where if you've got content, you can kind of see how they engage with that, even if it's just sending people to your website. Sending people an article you saw that, thought might be thought-provoking. There's lots of stuff there. And then just in general, making sure that it's, providing value and that you're personalizing. So if you've got, 10 or 50 companies you're going after, learn 2 to 3 things about them and kind of say, hey, I saw you recently hired a new, VP of sales, or I saw you recently, got acquired, or, got investment, et cetera, just actually care. That makes a big difference in some of the prospecting you see. If you can, drive towards some sort of a consultation. So it's not just, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I work at such and such, and we work with companies of, X, Y, and Z size. And if you need anything, feel free to let me know. Okay, well, if I need anything, I'll probably forget by the time I need it, and I probably won't remember to come back and look at my email in my inbox. So better if you can kind of provide value along the lines of having some sort of a consultation, assessment, offer. I've got a consultate or an offer at the end here. The idea is that it's not just, I'm not just selling you my services. Let's talk about, ways these things could actually help. Using the give get not new ideas, but give some insight before you try to get information out of people. Just kind of, when you're prospecting and working in this 100% remote world, people are getting more cold emails than not less. And so trying to stand out is going to be harder, but more important. And then I really harp on this. Do not simply just introduce yourself and say what you do. Really figure out some sort of way to provide value there. And that can make your prospecting much more effective. Another thing to consider, so this is more about sales team structure, but sometimes, like we were talking about, you've got sales reps that are working opportunities or deals in the pipeline. You obviously want them to stay focused on that. But if no one's going after new leads or looking into that, you're eventually going to have an empty pipeline. And then you go, okay, well, I need a rebuilding month to build it back up. Not ideal. But it's also, you don't necessarily always want to pull your salespeople away from, they're working high dollar deals. It doesn't always make sense to pull them off and say, well, you got to prospect with 20% of your time versus work on the deals. BDRs are kind of a common solution to this, or, business development rep, sales development rep, kind of a few different names for them. Sometimes it's just inside sales. They kind of, a lot of times they can be different. They can have different commission plans, but they help. Their whole job is to go out there and prospect. If you've got inbound leads or marketing leads coming in, it can be their job to actually follow up on them as quickly as possible. Helps to kind of balance the sales team out depending on the size. A lot of times you can even compensate them based on number of meetings booked or leads qualified versus, they're not trying to close the deals. They're trying to qualify the leads and pass them off to your more senior reps. So, and then, like I said, if you've got marketing leads coming in, that can be a really, having seen this firsthand, it's often difficult to get your busy sales reps to stop following up on the deals that are active in their pipeline and say, hey, I got this person that downloaded a white paper. I want you to follow up on them. Well, okay. A lot of salespeople do that, never, basically, without some, unless they're really dedicated. So trying to create this role, or at least someone with this responsibility, can help to solve that and helps your prospecting kind of work a little bit better. All right, third side of the triangle here, smarter insights. So again, when you're prospecting, when you've got a strong foundation in your CRM, your data is good, your processes are good, you're feeling good about that, and you've got good prospecting and various ways you're bringing people in. There's a lot of there are some really cool advanced integrations, and this is kind of where eventually you can get that can really make your CRM provide a lot of value for you and your sales team. So sales, it's a significant data operation, and with some of these integrations, you can actually start to capture a whole lot of new data and new data types that you're not even you haven't seen as much of before. So you want to make sure that your sales team is reaching out to people, but also that they're effective when they're reaching out. And that, if you're CEO, if you're, acting as the sales director, that you've got the information so that you can coach them on what is effective and how they can improve. So first off, when you're targeting people, there are a ton of tools out here that can help you be more effective with who you target. We talked, the very first thing we talked about was good data and bad data. Some of these are sources for that. So if you are trying to figure out the companies you want to target that meet certain criteria, don't be afraid to look at, Zoom Info is kind of the best general purpose one, I think. There's other tools out there. BuiltWith will tell you kind of what software things someone has on their website. Definitive's a little more healthcare oriented if you need, certain hospitals or physician groups. But there are good data broker sites out there. And for the time being, they are still legal in the United States. So feel free to check that out. That can help you spend a lot more time really focusing on the people that are, going to fit your ideal customer profile. So you're not, just pounding the pavement necessarily. You've got a little more intent behind it. When you're trying to figure out the contacts to target, so you can buy a list of people. That's kind of an iffy way to do it. I mean, I won't tell you it never works. It sometimes works. It sometimes doesn't. Can really kind of ruin your email sending reputation if you're not careful. So just, use caution. But maybe one of the better ways to do contact targeting, though, is with Sales Navigator. If you haven't tried out LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's really good if you need to go in exactly and see who is the, show me everyone who's in sales at X company, at companies that fit these target criteria. You can build out your lists and kind of keep track of what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. It's a really good intelligence tool, and it's an okay connection tool, I would say, or an okay prospecting tool. Just depends on kind of your audience. It also has really great company information on headcount and hiring trends. So like I'll often look to see, show me companies where there's a high number of salespeople and a low number of marketing people. So those are usually people, places where they're not doing a ton of marketing. You can look at stuff like that to actually get a sense. Companies will self-report how many employees they have. They don't necessarily self-report, how many of what type of employees they do. So if that's at all pertinent to who you're targeting, it's a good way to get some of that information. So that's about figuring out who to target. This is more about how to target and how to actually do the conversation, have the conversations. These are really cool. So just heads up. Crystal and Gong.io or Gong are really helpful tools in this regard. So I love Crystal. It's like a sales coach or kind of a mind reader, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. Basically, it's a personality tool. It helps sales reps choose the right approach for each prospect. And so if you're going through trying to figure out how to reach out to people, so you've figured out which companies you want to target, you figured out which individuals with Sales Navigator, now you can pull them up in Crystal. And basically, Crystal, you take a personality test or assessment with Crystal, and then it will scan people's LinkedIn profile and take a pretty good educated guess on what their personality type is, and then say, hey, you're a driver and they're a counselor. So here are recommended ways that you should talk to each other. If you want to have a discovery call, here are things that are going to pop up, or here's how to better talk to them. So it's kind of crazy, but it'll tell you things like, hey, this person's they're very competitive. So talk about how competitors are using this and how they're, crushing their competition this way or something. Or this person wants to hear about pricing early in the conversation. I get those a bunch, or that's what mine says if you try to talk to me. Let's say, talk about pricing early on with Parker. It's really cool and gives you a little more confidence when you're trying to figure out. You can say, okay, so when I talk to them, either by email or I'm going to have a call or go through a discovery call, it gives you a little more insight on kind of what's going to be most important to them and how you want to position it. It's really cool. They've got some free stuff too, so feel free to check that out. But again, just an idea of once you kind of get your foundation in place and start to prospect, there is a ton that different tools and integrations can get you here. The next one and kind of final one is Gong or Gong.io. And it's actually a sales coaching tool. And if you think about it, if you're a sales director or you're managing your sales team, the best insight you can get is from actually listening to the person in a meeting and see how they do. And if you've got a recording of that, that's great, but you can kind of hear how they handle it and give them actual, live tips or, as you're going through it. Problem is people are busy. And if you've got more than one salesperson, that can take a lot of time. You don't know if they're pulling out their best call or, a call at random. So basically what Gong does is it helps you analyze, one of the thing I like about it that it does is it'll help you analyze how your calls and meetings are going that your reps have. So if you're using Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever, it'll actually sit on there as another person and be like, your note taker. I think it'll transcribe the meeting. Then it'll show actually, if you tell it who your top performers are and connect it to your CRM, it'll start to look for trends based on that and then give you insights on, hey, your top sales rep always does this and then the deal closes. Maybe you should consider this. It can't read minds, but it'll tell you a lot of cool insights. So it'll look at kind of control the conversation. And I even pulled out, this is like across all people. So it's not necessarily going to be true just for your instance. What they say is the most successful salespeople tend not to monologue too much and ask the right amount of questions, which is 13 on average, which sounds pretty cool that it can tell you that. So just, again, this is kind of the holy grail of where you can get with a strong CRM, good integrations, and really using it. It can go lots of interesting places for you. So I think that's it on the integrations. Just wrapping up, being 100% remote can be an advantage. You just have to choose to seize it. So like I said, lots of cool stuff by having everyone working on the CRM, full data on how people are reaching out to people. You can give them insights on what's going to be the most important questions to ask, how their personalities are, predisposed to hear about sales, new opportunities, all that kind of stuff. So lots of opportunity. Would just encourage you to embrace it. Oh yeah, here we go. So clarifies the most important responsibilities. Your sales reps spend less time on non-sales related tasks. I forgot to call it out at the beginning, but that's one of the key things that good integrations and a good foundation really help you with is you don't want your salespeople doing a lot of data entry. That's why historically no one's harped so much on logging every call or every meeting or every email, because you think, well, I'd rather my sales reps be focused more on the stuff that's actually going to move the needle. But that's one of the things that we kind of we no longer have to make that trade-off here. And it helps drive the overall revenue operation. By kind of embracing some of this stuff, you get a lot better report. Like I said, there's a lot more data, there's a lot more reporting. You can understand a lot more about your sales process by really moving, 100% remote and getting everything in the CRM. You will be kind of shocked at how much more you can learn about it. So, and then finally, if you, I'm sorry, need help with any of this or want to chat along these lines, if you're not using a CRM or you're on HubSpot or Salesforce, we can do a platform evaluation for you. Just reach out. If you're using something else, I don't know a lot about, there are too many CRMs to know about them all. So we kind of limit it this way, but if you're using something else, I guess reach out to, and we'll see what we can do. But that's it for the presentation. What questions y'all have or other CRM ideas we can throw around?
Parker, where are you on video on the front end? Are you seeing, from what I hear, you have much higher adoption with it, but I also hear it creates some difficulty in the email, some of that issue. And I think, and I guess a secondary question is, I think HubSpot's alignments with Vidyard. Is there anybody else that you know of or you use?
Yeah, so you're talking about how people using video in the sales process and like in different emails.
Yeah, particularly like the SDR, BDR role. So mostly what I think people would consider the front end. Of a deal.
Yeah, that was as I was looking at this right ahead of time. I was like, gosh, I put video in here. It is very industry specific or vertical specific. Some industries, people think it's cool. Some industries, it's just kind of like, why would you send me that's so creepy. So, something to experiment with. It's not just like leaving a voicemail, right? It's, oh, I actually see I've got a video from Richard or whoever. It's just going to depend. I think it's going to change over time. But for right now, I would kind of experiment with, if you've got kind of a more forward-leaning or progressive industry that you're operating in or that you're targeting, definitely worth a shot. If you're, if you're doing, accounting, I don't know, won't pick on anyone, but if you've got a more conservative customer base, I would tread lightly. Oh, and then your second question on different services. Yeah, Vidyard does have a nice integration. I've also used Soapbox. It's kind of a nice one too. That's from Wistia. That's like $10 a month, but it'll help you. You can do a lot of the same stuff where if you want to do like a quick demo of something, do 1/3 your face, or your camera and 2/3 the screen. It's pretty cool and does some nice stuff there. And that fits into the prospecting stuff too. When you're sending videos, one of the nice things is you can usually see what the engagement is. So you can see did someone actually watch it, and then maybe they watched it, they didn't respond. Well, they're going to be higher on your list to follow up with than someone who did nothing with it. So
yeah, and I did have a question there that I didn't articulate very well. So in the middle there, so if you believe video is a good engagement tool for your vertical, do you notice a drop in the email adoption rate or email rate when there is like a Vidyard video embedded?
I haven't seen anything specifically. I would expect you're talking about just people wouldn't respond as much if they got it.
No, I'm talking about people don't get through a lot of the corporate.
Oh, because so usually it's the trick here is that you can't actually send the video in most emails. It's sending a picture of the video and then it kicks off to a website.
Sure.
That's another one. If you're dealing in a highly regulated target audience, would also kind of tread lightly, just because some of that stuff can look strange to firewalls. A lot of this stuff, honestly, I've seen firewalls get more aggressive and it can trip up a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I mean, if it's got a link to, I guess it would have a link to a site that's not necessarily your own, that could maybe cause some problems. I've seen stuff that just anytime you throw in a link, it's gonna throw a fit. So
Yeah.
I don't know that it's that much worse than anything else. There's just a trend of firewalls getting more finicky.
And then inside of Navigator, last thing I'll ask is inside of Navigator, have you used they have an embedded document tracking tool itself? Yeah. Do you use that, or do you use the one that is already inside of HubSpot?
When I can, I use the HubSpot one because that's going to flow back into the CRM. HubSpot's got an integration with Sales Navigator, but it doesn't pull that information back in. LinkedIn's really stingy. Actually.
Yeah, it can't pull the list either, right? It's like the weirdest thing. It won't actually pull the list.
LinkedIn is very touchy about, they will let you use their data if you are in their platform. But if you want to put that data somewhere else, they do not like that.
Yeah.
So,
okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Yep. We made Joe laugh, so I'll take that as a win.
You know, this whole movement towards AI, and you know, I saw a couple of the chat comments about creepiness, you know, and to your point about regulation, and you know, some verticals accept certain things and some don't. You know, there's always the never-ending struggle between buyers and sellers and getting control, and you know, and buyers don't trust sellers and all of that. So you know, in future curve planning, this is really going to be interesting 6 to 12 months down the road, how buyers try to prevent sellers from getting all of their critical data. It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you who you're selling to because then you understand their personality profile and know their weaknesses.
Right.
Yeah, I think the trick, Joe, is in almost any service you sign up for now, if you're using any tools yourself, it's collecting data on you. So your only way to really firewall it is, in fact, not to use those tools for your own work. So it gets tough, or something substandard that's not as popular, that doesn't have good integration, or people aren't getting that data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can go both ways too, though. If you're not, you know, if I guess if I got an email from someone, you know, if it was a prospect for my business and they weren't on LinkedIn, I would probably think, I would probably pause and go, is this a real person or not? You know? So yeah, agreed. But yeah, if you try to go the off the grid route, it might backfire too.
Parker, do you have any thoughts about, so salespeople historically have not been big fans of using CRM, right?
What?
So, you know, and now with remote selling, there's fewer and fewer excuses about not using it, right? But the question becomes, you know, do you have any thoughts or ideas or tips about how to get salespeople more interested and motivated in using CRM?
Yeah, I oftentimes will use a pretty simple carrot and stick approach. The stick is
a really big stick and a really small carrot.
Yeah, exactly. No, the stick is reporting. Basically, it's, you know, hey, we can see exactly, you know, who's being most effective at following up on new leads and who's logging the most activities. The carrot, though, and I probably didn't call this out enough, is actually sales enablement tools that make it easier for you to follow up on things. Right. So a lot of times, like, that can be an email template or collateral or things like that, where we say, hey, we're going to expect more out of you, but we're also going to try to make this easier on you. So, you know, if you keep things up to date in the CRM, your template's going to pre-populate with all that information. Or, you know, when we run a marketing campaign and generate a lead, we're not just going to throw them over to you and let you add them. We're going to say, hey, here are some talking points from the webinar where we got them, or from the ebook or the white paper. Ask them one of these following questions based on what you think they're going to be interested in. So we try to come at it from both angles to help that very issue.
Joe, I would tell you, I've seen some of the reverse lately. I've seen a lot of sales people in interviews immediately ask about the marketing stack. So they want to know what they're going to be working in. They want to know what tools they're going to have. Yeah. And if they come from a company with a good sales enablement stack, they're not going to want to go where you don't have one. Like, if they've gotten used to selling that way with that level of insight, and you suddenly tell them you're not going to have those tools, So I think you're actually, I agree with you, Joe. For 20 years, I've taken on the getting salespeople to use CRM fight. But now I literally think you have the opposite happening. If they've been in a company with a good sales enablement stack, they want nothing to do with a company that doesn't have one.
Yeah, I'm there with it.
That's interesting. Wow.
As a sales guy, I can tell you, when I got here, we had a terrible CRM. It was nothing more than a telephone number tracker. It was hard to enter anything in. The information I got back out was terrible. And so I just used an Excel spreadsheet, which is fine when I first got started because it was easy I didn't have that much data flying around. But as I grew and I had more and more and more, it's just, it's risky. You're going to lose stuff. And then I would try to integrate the Excel spreadsheet up into our Salesforce. But the program was kind of, the Salesforce program was sort of the out of the box one. Best thing that ever happened. And I fought it all the time. And, they were like, hey, enter all this stuff in. And I'm like, it takes me hours and hours a day to enter this stuff, and I'm not making sales. Very frustrating. So the best thing that happened was our CEO decided she's going to invest in Salesforce, and I want to say she spent maybe $5,000 or $6,000, and got Salesforce on the line and said, Adam, how do you sell? And let's build it around what you need to track, how our customers interact with you, and let's really spend the money and invest in it. And then they also hired a guy that he's actually sitting in with me right now. And his job is to get into almost the coding level of Salesforce. And that makes it to where I can get him to help me with entering some of the finite details that I really do need to have, but it's not slowing me down on going out and closing the deal. And then if I have a problem with Salesforce, he can fix it instead of me being frustrated with it and it building I'm not going to use this particular feature because it's frustrating. Well, he can fix it right away. So the best money they've ever spent on me, and I very much appreciate it, is they hired a guy that is a Salesforce expert, and then they got Salesforce to actually customize it to our industry and our customers. Now I'm a believer. I can track things like never before. I could show you how it tracks my opportunities in a column stage, and I can go through. Once I get caught up for the day, I can just go back through my opportunities. It's made me a much better, much more effective salesperson.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Adam. That's great. That's great. Wow. I noticed we're up to time. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Steph, Parker, you guys want to wrap up or?
Yeah. Parker, do you have any closing before go on?
No, CRMs are cool if you want them to be.
I agree. And it's worth the work at the front end once you get it all set up.
Very much so.
And you get it, it's so worth it. So that's my message.
Yep.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. We just wanted to let you know that we have some kind of other events coming up. Our next Lessons from the Trenches event is on Friday, October the 16th. Here in a couple of weeks, it's going to be at 11 o'clock. The focus of this one is going to be disaster planning for private business owners, your family's guide to peace of mind. And our expert panel will be discussing ways that you can get ahead and start making some plans now for anything that might come along. Our next CEO Lessons is also open for registration. That is Wednesday, November the 18th. Feel free to mark your calendars on that one. We don't have the topic yet because, as you know, we pull the topics each month from all of the feedback that we receive from our board meetings and hone in on the most effective or most informational topic. One other thing that we have, and we just sent out some information yesterday about this, but we've got a sales boot camp coming up. So in order to help our members strengthen their sales efforts and position themselves to grow rapidly and profitably in 2021, we're offering an exclusive and complimentary opportunity for our members. The bootcamp is going to be 4 90-minute sessions delivered in consecutive weeks. It's going to be basically a step-by-step guide to create an effective, sustainable, predictable, world-class sales machine. So again, this is complimentary for all of the active members of Tab Austin and our specially invited guests. If you're interested in joining that, I will be putting links to both of these two in the bottom, in the chat. So keep an eye out for that in just 1 second here. And then we also have our next Lunch and Learn coming up on the 30th. And that's going to be focused on surviving the digital jungle, delivering a highly effective digital experience, and how websites can help you in the new normal. So with that, I just want to say thank you again to Parker. I know I walked away with a ton of info today. This is great. Thank you all again for being here. Joe, did you have anything else that you'd like to share?
I would just like to double down on thank you all. I think it's been a great conversation, some great questions. Parker, thank you so much. I also took a few pages of notes myself, so I need to go check out some of these integration and insight tools. And I hope you all have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon. As Stephanie mentioned, we have all sorts of events coming up in the next 30 days.
And if you have any suggestions or feedback for events or topics, please always feel free to reach out and let me know. I'm always open to hearing what our community is interested in.
Awesome.
So that's great. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks again,
you
Parker.
too.
Okay.